I watched every play of the game, maybe checked out the last 5 minutes or so, but maybe couldn't run the ball as well as I would expect Penn State to be able to run the ball. Illinois' got a nice front. They've got some of the best players in the Big Ten up front, especially Johnny Newton might be, he's a wrecking crew unto himself. Drew Aller looked good at times, didn't look so good at times. You don't want him completing less than 50% of his passes. They got 5 turnovers, did not turn over the ball themselves. So you would have expected, I think, for it to be a little bit more comfortable than it was.
Yeah, really the biggest problem with Penn State on Saturday was just lack of execution from the offense. But I mean, the first road game of the year, first road start for Drew Aller, conference opponent. Like you said, Illinois' defense is much better than they had shown against Kansas. Johnny Newton was just a one-man wrecking crew. It did not matter where he lined up. It didn't matter if it was inside. He was pushing Olufashanu around. He was a man possessed in that game. And without Newton, honestly, Penn State probably wins that thing by 30 plus. But you mentioned Drew. He definitely missed some throws in that game. I said during the game that that's a film he's going to learn a lot from, and then he's going to want to burn it and never watch it again. That said, he also was hurt by some drops. There was 3 balls that he put right on the money, 2 of which have been for first downs, 1 of which would have been a touchdown that were dropped. And there were 4 balls batted down at the line of scrimmage. So, the 3 drops should have been caught, and of those 4 that were batted down, even if you complete 2 of those, his stat line looks a lot different. The drop in the end zone, Penn State settled for a field goal that drive. So again, that right there, puts it at 34-13 instead of 30. So yeah, I think the offense definitely a learning experience. I agree with you. They didn't run the balls quite as well as you had hoped. But again, a lot of that was Johnny Newton just wrecking it. And some of it was Nick Singleton, I think, got a little antsy at times. There were holes there he didn't see, tried to bounce things that just didn't work. But yeah, all in all, anytime you go on the road in the Big Ten and you win by 17, and you're winning by 20 plus when your starters come out, you're going to take that every time, especially when it's your first road game of the year and a quarterback making his first ever road start.
Marty Leap is here to talk some Penn State football with us. The Nittany Lions on the win column in the Big Ten with a road victory at Illinois, take on Iowa this week. So Illinois might have been a better football team slightly than Iowa last year, but certainly Iowa's a better program, expected to be better this year, probably has been a better team this year as Illinois struggled against, as you mentioned, on the road against Kansas. So we're talking a team that you could never envision turning the ball over 3 times, let alone 5 times. So they're not going to get those kind of gifts, Penn State, from Iowa, you would think. Plus the defense is expected to be at its usual standard. So this is a pretty stern challenge.
Yeah, it's a big test without a doubt. Now, I mean, you look at Iowa, some of the things today, you already knew they're going to be without the tight end Lachey, who's their best offensive weapon after dislocating his ankle this past Saturday. And today when they released their depth chart for the week, neither of their top 2 running backs are present. So there might be an Iowa offense that's really hamstrung on Saturday. But with Iowa, I feel like it doesn't matter because if they win, it's going to be because of their defense anyway. So it should be a good test. It's going to be the whiteout for Penn State, so that place is going to be juiced up. A lot of fans still have some bad blood about that 2021 game in Iowa City where Penn State looked like they were on their way to just romping Iowa that day until Sean Clifford got hurt. There were some comments made by Kirk Ferentz after the game that I know did not sit well with Penn State fans and Penn State coaches alike. So it should be a great atmosphere Saturday night. It should be a great game. I definitely think it's a good litmus test, though, for this Penn State offense because if they can come out, they've scored 30 points in it's either 10 or 11 straight games now. And the only other time they did this in the James Franklin era, it was Iowa who snapped the streak. So if they can come out Saturday and keep that 30-point streak alive, I think you're going to feel really good about this offense. And I think it's safe to say they'll have a good bounce back performance. But regardless, should be a great game Saturday night, a good test for Penn State's offense. And like I said, regardless of what Iowa does or doesn't have available offensively, when you're playing the Hawkeyes, it's that defense, it's the pick sixes, it's those things that worry you because Iowa does it better than just about anybody. But yeah, definitely should be a great game on Saturday.
They do, and it's crazy the regularity at which they turn defense into offense at Iowa. This has been going on now for 20 plus years under Kirk Ferentz. They lead the nation in defensive and special teams touchdowns during that time. And it seems extremely random for most teams across the country, but for them, there's obviously a secret sauce because they continue to do it. On the injury note, as Marty mentions, that would be Jazz Patterson was their backup quarterback who had a big day against Iowa State the previous week. So he's nicked up. And also Caleb Johnson was held out of the game. Their starting running back who gained about 900 yards last year. So they relied on LaShawn Williams, 12 carries for $145 against Western Michigan. So, yeah, trying to get the running game going against Iowa is not going to be an easy task. Your thoughts about the offensive line, Nick Singleton, of course, Katron Allen, I got to think that they're not really at fault here. Maybe anything that you see with play calling that they could do differently?
I'm not super worried about play calling. I will say that, when it was all said and done against Illinois last week, and again, I say take this with the caveat that Johnny Newton was you watched the game, Mark. You saw how he was. He was just determined to win that game for Illinois. Penn State still ran for 164 yards. They still averaged over 4 yards per carry. You'll take that every time against the defensive line featuring a player like Newton. And, I think with Penn State too, some of that comes with the change in expectations this year, right? Like this team's viewed as a team that could legitimately contend for college football playoff berth. So, you're going to hold them to a little bit of higher standard, but I'm not worried about the play calling. I thought Mike Yursich called a terrific game against Illinois. Again, there was a lot of poor execution between drops, balls getting batted down. A couple of times Nick Singleton had holes he didn't see and tried to bounce outside. I think they'll be okay. I think against Iowa, it's never easy to run the ball against Iowa, but at the same time, Iowa doesn't have Johnny Newton, so that'll help as well. I think Iowa's defense as a whole is probably better than Illinois', but when you don't have that one game record, it can be easier to move the ball. I think if Penn State's offensive line could come out and play how they played against Illinois overall and still average 4 or so yards per carry, you're going to be happy. And again, it's the whiteout. It's hard to explain to people who have never been to one or don't, follow Penn State religiously. That atmosphere makes things happen. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see Singleton's due. He has not had a big, I think his longest rush this year is like 16 yards. His longest pass reception is like 25. He is due. I won't be surprised to see him get it Saturday night and rip off a 40, 50, 60-yard run or get a pass in the flats and go for 40 yards. But yeah, I think if Penn State's offensive line can just play how they've played, they'll be all right. They played better against Illinois than I think it seemed on the first watch from going back and rewatching the game. So if they come out and repeat that performance, I see no reason they can't average 4 or so yards per carry again. And hey, you'll take that all day because 4 yards a clip's going to get you first down. So it will be a big test for the offensive line, but I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, the whiteout can be a major force. Much like what Penn State's experienced going on the road at Iowa at Kinnick Stadium, in which they've had at times significantly or decidedly better or more talented teams, and they've run into the Hawkeyes. Of course, lost the last time there, as Marty mentioned. The time before, I believe, was the Trace McSorley touchdown in the back of the end zone with 1 second left on the clock, or just a picture-perfect Iowa formula to come that close to pull off an upset. They did everything they possibly could to suppress Saquon Barkley and Penn State's Chris Godwin, whoever was in play there. That would have been 2017 or 2017.
Yeah.
The team that won the Fiesta Bowl. So, yeah, it's an interesting series. It's been a close series. And going back to what you mentioned about the controversy at the end of the previous matchup 2 years ago in 21. So Sean Clifford left the game. I believe Penn State was up 7-zip, 10-zip.
They were up 14-3
14-3
at a third down deep in Iowa territory. The Clifford got hit on the throw, and the throw sailed. Would have been a touchdown had he been able to hit it on the money. Got held to a field goal to make it 17-3, and he never came back in after that third down play. So they were well on their way, it seemed, to winning it and probably winning it easily.
And the backup Roberson, Taquan Roberson, right?
Correct. He's
who has since gone to like UConn or UConn. He was about as lost as a quarterback, as a backup quarterback for a big time program as I've seen.
Yeah, there were plays where they literally could not get the snap off. Like he didn't know the snap count. He didn't know the cadence. I mean, now some of that obviously falls back on coaching. You should have your backup quarterback more prepared than that. But it was his first, I think only like the second or third game he'd ever played in, first non-garbage time at Kinnick. That's a recipe for disaster for just about any quarterback.
So was the controversy that Franklin insinuated that Penn State would have won the game, or was it the hit on Clifford?
Oh no, it wasn't even the hit on Clifford. What had happened was, as the game went on, PJ Mustipher, which was maybe even as big as the Clifford injury, tore his ACL,
Yes.
and then Arnold Ebiketie was dealing with an ankle injury. And when Mustipher was down, there was an Iowa. Did you ever see the meme of the Iowa guy holding his shoulder in the stands, acting like
Yeah.
he's hurt? That's where it came from. And when Ebiketie got hurt, Iowa's special teams coordinator was flopping around on the sidelines, suggesting he was faking the injury because, you really need to fake injuries to slow down that high-paced, fast-moving Iowa offense. And then after the game, Kirk Ferentz made a comment about how Penn State was faking injuries and he can smell a rat and da-da-da-da-da. And I think the reason that really hit home was, A, they weren't, and B, like PJ Mustipher tore his ACL, did not play the rest of the year, and was never the same player again. Like he went from probably a top 100 draft pick to a guy that's not even on an NFL roster since that injury. So that was the big controversy coming out of it on Penn State's end. Is I know those comments did not sit well with the coaching staff. And even though no coach would ever admit something like this, I can guarantee you from buzz I've heard and talking to people that if Ohio State and Michigan aside, if there's one game they've had circled on the calendar this year, it's this one. That's what really irked Penn State people coming out of the game because injuries happen. You know what I mean? Your quarterback gets hurt, you lose a game. That happens all the time in football, unfortunately. But it was the comments of Kirk Ferentz after the game and the actions of his coaches on the sidelines during the game that really, left a really bad taste in people's mouth, even more so than the fact they lost the game.
And we've got these two playing on CBS in the first Big Ten match. No, they've had other Big Ten matchups. They had Northwestern and
game. Yeah,
they've had a couple prime time CBS.
Yeah, they've had a couple noon and 3:30 games so far.
Yes.
This will be the first Big Ten primetime game on CBS.
There we go. And for old timers like me, we remember the Big Ten being on CBS a long, long time ago. But the Big Ten,
even people of my age, I'm excited to. I grew up with Nestler and Danielson on ABC calling Big Ten games. So seeing them together calling the Big Ten on CBS is a lot of fun. Like that took me back to my childhood, even.
And I think they're happy to be calling a decent game.
Yes,
because the way they sit in the pecking order, they're not going to get the best games in the Big Ten. No. They'll get the second or third, and depending on how that sets, may not be a great game. And they've called, some less than stellar games thus far to start the season, but they get a good one here with Iowa and Penn State. Anything else on this one that we missed? If Penn State needs a late field goal, Alex Felkins appears like he's up to the task.
Yeah, I will say I think probably the most pleasant surprise through 3 weeks has been Alex Felkins, just simply because there were so many questions about the kicking game coming into the year. And then against West Virginia in the first half, Sandra Sahadak misses 2 very easy field goals. But in the second half of that game, Felkins came in, made all his extra points, made a field goal, made all his extra points against Delaware, made them all against Illinois. 3 for 4 on field goals against Illinois, including a 45-yarder. And the only one he missed was from 52 and got blocked. And even if he would have missed it, you're never going to be upset at a kicker for missing a 52-yard field goal, especially in that situation, because there was, I think like a minute and a half left until halftime. So, yeah, I think Felkins definitely has really settled things down there. And I said this after the game on Saturday. Again, this is something James Franklin would never admit, but the series where their offense kind of flamed out after the one turnover and Felkins had to attempt a 45-yard field goal as a result, you might not be totally tore up, especially in a game you knew you were going to win because, hey, if nothing else, for his own confidence and momentum to hit a 45-yard field goal on the road, hostile environment, conference play, that can be big. I've always said kicking is very similar to hitting in baseball. It's 90% mental. You've got to have that mindset, and you've got to be in a good rhythm and a good routine with your feet, just like you need to be in a good rhythm and a good routine with your swing at the plate. And I think Felkins is there right now. And that, like I said, if you had to ask me for my biggest pleasant surprise through 3 weeks, it would undoubtedly be Alex Felkins.
Good stuff from Marty. I expect this one to be a good one. I sent out a tweet this week asking for people to select the best game, the best matchup for them if they could only watch one game this week. And I had several people discounting Penn State, Iowa as some kind of snooze fest. But where I sit, this is great stuff. This is great stuff. Marty, appreciate you stopping by. Join Marty on Penn State's Rivals site. What's the best way to get there, Marty? We got your Twitter handle there, but the best way to find your work.
Yeah, best way to find us. Through Penn State Rivals, obviously, but we're Happy Valley Insider. So just go ahead, type it up, Google it, Happy Valley Insider, Penn State Rivals, whatever you want to type in. Either way, it'll take you there, and that's where you can find all our work. And we'll continue to have you covered throughout the season.
Thanks, Marty. Enjoy the game.
Thank you. Talk soon.